A Harvard astrophysicist believes there's a strong likelihood this is a craft of alien origin.
The red alert from NASA, which at first might have seemed like just another urgent scientific update in a long line of discoveries, instead detonated across human civilization like a shockwave. For when the James Webb Space Telescope captured the impossible elegance of early galaxies and the titanic shadows of black holes that by all rights should not exist in such a young universe, the very foundation of cosmology trembled, and with it every discipline from physics to philosophy found itself hurled into a state of re-evaluation, because what had once been described as a messy infant cosmos, chaotic, formless, turbulent, suddenly revealed itself as something far stranger and more structured, as if the universe had been born not stumbling but running, already writing symmetries and complexity into its first pages. And the longer scientists stared at the data, the more they realized that these patterns could not be brushed aside as observational error. No, the galaxies truly were the spirals and ellipses with arms so orderly they mocked the neat timelines of textbooks. And the black holes were real too, their gravitational signatures bending light from billions of light years behind them. Monsters sitting at the hearts of galaxies that should not yet exist. Their presence screaming of mechanisms of formation utterly alien to known models. And as the AI systems trained on the data ran recursive analyses, they found harmonics and clustering behaviors in the light curves, patterns that whispered of hidden laws not yet named. Or perhaps, some dared to imagine, intentional structures written into the cosmos itself, like a mathematical watermark placed in the fabric of space-time by forces or entities beyond comprehension. And while most scientists resisted such leaps into the speculative, the fact remained that the Webb had not only expanded the horizon of human sight but had revealed that our cosmic infancy is not as it seemed, that complexity and order bloom much earlier, much more naturally, and perhaps much more universally than we had dared to hope. And this realization cascaded outward into consequences beyond science, for policymakers suddenly confronted the possibility that life, intelligent life, might have emerged not in rare isolated pockets but prolifically across the early universe, meaning that civilizations billions of years older than our own may exist, or may have existed. And if so, the silence we perceive in the skies is not the silence of absence but of distance, time, or deliberate withholding. And so discussions once relegated to the speculative corners of astrobiology suddenly occupied seats in parliaments and congresses, where the implications of contact, or evidence of contact, demanded attention, while corporations saw in the anomalies hints of technologies yet unimagined, energy harvested from black hole ergospheres, propulsion systems riding the subtle curvatures of space-time itself, computational architectures mimicking the self-organizing principles that galaxies seem to follow from their infancy, and philosophers in turn revisited ancient questions of order and chaos, of purpose and accident, with new urgency. For if the universe seems predisposed toward structure, then perhaps emergence is not random but law-like. Perhaps life itself is not a fragile aberration but an inevitable flowering wherever matter gathers. And if so, then humanity must reconsider its self-image not as the lonely custodian of meaning but as one branch on a vast and ancient tree. And in this recognition came both awe and dread, for the thought of cosmic neighbors uplifted the imagination but also forced a confrontation with fragility, with the likelihood that civilizations far older than ours may see us as little more than seedlings in the soil of space-time. And while the public wrestled with existential wonder, the scientific community itself fractured into new schools of thought, some clinging to modified models that sought to explain away the anomalies with faster rates of star formation, exotic dark matter interactions, or errors in distance calibration, while others declared that the anomalies demanded nothing less than a paradigm shift, a rewriting of cosmology as profound as the leap from Newton to Einstein, or perhaps even beyond Einstein to a framework where time itself is emergent and the Big Bang is not an origin but a transition from a prior state, a deeper cycle, a universe within a universe. And through all of this, AI played a new and startling role, not merely as a tool but as an interpreter, because the complexity of Webb's data now exceeded human capacity to parse directly, requiring machine learning to spot patterns, correlations, and symmetries invisible to even the most trained human eye, and so forth. The first time humanity was not discovering alone but discovering through an alien partner of its own making, an artificial mind capable of insights humans could not achieve unaided. And this raised its own philosophical questions. For if AI was now the bridge between human curiosity and cosmic truth, then discovery itself was no longer purely a human act but a collaboration between species, one organic, one synthetic. And some asked whether in that partnership we had already taken the first step toward the kind of symbiosis that might allow civilizations to survive the millennia and reach the stars, while others recoiled in suspicion, fearing that by ceding interpretation to machines we risked alienating ourselves from the meaning of discovery, becoming passive recipients of truth we could not understand without intermediaries. Yet even as these debates raged, the web continued to feed its revelations. Exoplanets with atmospheric chemistry too complex for their age. Gravitational waves hinting at collisions of black holes older than logic allowed. Lensing effects that suggested the presence of hidden structures not accounted for by dark matter. And in each case the sense deepened that the universe is not the simple, linear story we once told, but a labyrinth of order, complexity, and mystery woven from its first breath. And as these truths sank into the collective consciousness, culture itself began to shift, with artists painting visions of primordial galaxies as stained glass windows of creation, with musicians composing symphonies around the harmonics identified by AI in the light curves, with writers spinning epics of civilizations that may have risen billions of years before ours, their ruins scattered invisibly across the cosmic sea, and children, gazing at the night sky, no longer asked whether there was life out there but when we would find it. And in that cultural shift lay perhaps the greatest transformation of all, for the web had not simply rewritten textbooks, it had rewritten imagination. And from imagination comes the trajectory of civilization, meaning that the red alert was not only an announcement to scientists but a summons to humanity, a declaration that the story of the universe is vaster, stranger, and more alive than we dared to believe. And that our task is no longer to ask whether we belong in it, but to decide what role we will play in its unfolding drama. For in the end, the galaxies that should not exist, the black holes that should not yet have formed, the atmospheres that should not already be rich, and the patterns that should not have been written are all telling us one thing: that reality itself is more generous than our models, more astonishing than our expectations, and more mysterious than our courage has yet allowed us to admit. And in that truth, in that inexhaustible horizon of wonder, lies the true meaning of the web's revelation. Not an end to questioning, but the opening of an infinite door. Not the silence of a void, but the music of a cosmos that has been singing all along, waiting for us to finally listen. When NASA's Red Alert system triggered the global scientific community with its announcement about the interstellar body informally christened 3I Atlas, what began as a technical bulletin about a faint moving point of light rapidly mutated into a multidisciplinary upheaval of thought, because the data streaming in from telescopes on Earth and in orbit stubbornly refused to fit into any of the tidy boxes into which astronomers normally sort celestial visitors, and instead the object unfolded into a paradox wrapped in stone, its spectral signature displaying chemical ratios that contradicted known astrophysical pathways, its surface reflectivity modulating in rhythmic patterns too precise to dismiss as noise, and its trajectory wobbling with a complexity that defied simple gravitational prediction. So much so that when NASA partnered with Google's most advanced artificial intelligence systems to model its behavior, the results startled even veteran researchers. For the AI revealed recursive harmonics, hidden symmetries in its reflectance, and anomalous micro-oscillations in its orbital arc that collectively suggested that 3I Atlas was not merely a fragment of cosmic debris but something closer to a manuscript of galactic memory, a body that had drifted across stellar graveyards, pulsar storms, and magnetic fields, each encounter etched into its mineral structure like invisible calligraphy. And suddenly the community realized that decoding such an object was not just a matter of astrophysics but of paleontology on a cosmic scale, a forensic reconstruction of epochs long gone, where matter itself became the historian, carrying scars of collisions, fractures from tidal stresses, alignments of magnetic grains that whispered of long-past magnetospheres, and crystalline lattices rearranged by exposure to gamma bursts so violent no human technology could endure them, making this solitary wonder of both artifact and witness, messenger and archive. And as the AI probed deeper, identifying thermal retention behaviors akin to engineered heat capacitors and layering patterns that implied repeated cycles of violent compression and sudden release, scientists began to imagine that 3I Atlas could be reverse-engineered not merely for knowledge but for innovation, its resilience against temperature extremes suggesting applications for spacecraft hulls, its long-term energy storage hinting at breakthroughs in material sciences, and its spectral harmonics provoking speculation that perhaps, just perhaps, some of its features were not the accidental outcome of blind physics but the deliberate encoding of information by civilizations long vanished, civilizations that may have realized that rocks would outlast radio waves, that the most enduring medium for interstellar messages was not light but matter. And if that were true, then every passing interstellar object might be a letter in a galactic archive humanity had only just learned to open. And this realization ignited not only the imaginations of physicists and engineers but also of philosophers, who saw in it confirmation of an ancient intuition that the universe is not mute but speaks constantly through patterns, rhythms, and structures, though only a mind sharpened by both curiosity and technology could translate it. And so the collaboration between human observers and machine learning models took on an almost spiritual dimension, as though intelligence itself, whether biological or artificial, was the missing key in a lock that had existed since the birth of the stars, waiting for a species with enough persistence to listen and enough humility to recognize that the rocks themselves were storytellers, and the cultural reverberations were immediate, as artists painted canvases of interstellar archives drifting across dark gulfs. Musicians translated the harmonic rhythms of the asteroid's reflective pulses into symphonies, and poets wrote of matter as memory, and of cosmic travelers as librarians of the galaxy, while at the same time planetary defense specialists faced the sobering realization that the very complexity which made 3I Atlas so fascinating also made it unpredictable, its irregularities undermining the reliability of existing models, meaning that defending Earth from such bodies could no longer be a matter of brute force deflection strategies, but would require a new paradigm where AI continuously updates dynamic simulations, predicting not just where such objects are but how their behaviors evolve, effectively creating a new science of interstellar object psychology. And in the laboratories, the AI pushed even further, revealing that the microfraction networks inside 3I Atlas aligned in ways consistent with repeated tidal stressing, suggesting that it had not simply wandered randomly but had threaded its way past multiple stellar systems, each encounter leaving a measurable scar, and some dared to suggest that reconstructing those scars could allow us to map ancient migration routes across the galaxy, tracing not only the asteroid's journey but the gravitational fingerprints of stars that may have since burned out, giving us a method of resurrecting vanished systems by reading their signatures in stone. And if this was true, then every interstellar traveler was not only an object but a cartographer, carrying maps of places long gone. And in that realization lay an almost unbearable poignancy. For it meant that through such objects we were in contact not just with alien matter but with extinct worlds, fragments of systems that lived and died before Earth had cooled, shards of forgotten galaxies passing silently through ours, each one a drifting gravestone of cosmic history. And yet instead of despair, the community felt exhilaration, because this meant the universe had not left us alone but had filled the dark with messages written in durability rather than light, and that humanity, in rising to meet this moment, was stepping into a role it had never fully grasped, archivist of the cosmos, interpreter of its wandering messengers. And in this light, even the practical discussions of mission planning took on a mythic resonance, as proposals circulated for AI-guided interceptors that could rendezvous with interstellar objects, perform in situ analysis, and transmit their stratified testimonies back to Earth, effectively creating a galactic library catalogued not by intention but by accident, where every visitor became a book and every analysis an act of translation. And as cultural institutions absorbed this vision, exhibitions were planned, symphonies composed, and entire philosophical schools arose around the idea that intelligence exists to listen, that curiosity is not just a human quirk but the very mode by which the universe becomes aware of itself. And through all this 3i Atlas continued its indifferent journey, spinning slowly, scarred but intact, carrying within it the memories of stellar births, magnetic storms, collisions, and losses that no consciousness had ever witnessed, waiting now not for the silence of space but for the minds of Earth and their silicon partners to give its story voice, a story not of one rock but of the universe itself writing its autobiography in fragments, scattering them through the dark, confident that somewhere, someday, someone would learn to read.